You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Welcome to the show, wherever, whenever, however you are joining us today. Faith in Sport, where we combine two of my loves and two of the things that you look forward to in this show, and that is our Catholic faith and the world of sport. What we do is we talk about sport, we talk about X's and O's and wins and losses and so forth, but what we try to do is focus on character, morality, and ethics as they relate to sport. So if you're joining us today via podcast, via live radio, however that is, we are so appreciative for joining us here on Faith in Sport. Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science at Wingate University in North Carolina. But every once in a while, I get on the airwaves and I bring this show to you. Here's what we're doing today. We are going to talk today's sports topics, including our hit and miss with Jason Murphy, host of the radio show, The Obligation, a podcast as well, heard on Carolina Catholic Radio, as well as you can check out his podcast at theobligationshow.com. We'll bring Jason on in just a minute. And today is a rarity. I think this is the first time I've ever done it. We have two other guests on the show. Joining us in the second half of the show is Joe Condit, the founder and director of CatholicSpeakers.com, where parishes and conference organizers can go to bring that event to the next level. That's Joe Condit joining us in the second half. And then in the last few minutes of the show, Dr. Gerry McDermott, a longtime professor of religion and philosophy, has written a couple articles on the Israeli war, and he has a message for today's Christians about this war. This guy is great. He's been on the show several times before. He's going to join us in the last few minutes of this program, so stay tuned for both Joe Condit and Gerry McDermott in the second half of this program. Folks, either way, thank you for joining us here on Faith in Sport. Let's bring on our special guest. He is Jason Murphy. He is the host of the show, The Obligation. Jason Murphy, you're here to talk faith and sport with us, brother. How you doing today?
Hey, Dr. John, I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day and glad to be here on Faith and Sport.
I think this is the first time, Jason, that I've ever had anybody on where they're in their backyard. So an eagle at any point can come and take your glasses right off your face, couldn't he?
That's right. That's right. I wish it was my backyard. It's actually the backyard of the boxing gym that I work out at. So I'm really excited. I'm in my home away from home, though, for sure.
Jason, at any point, can somebody walk up to you and then like pose a duel with you or something? Can that happen?
I could be knocked right out of the chair right here as we talk, Doc. So keep an eye on it. Keep an eye.
This is great. In fact, not only are you outside, this is the first time anybody has joined us in the backyard of a boxing gym. This is fantastic. Right. Brother, what's on your mind regarding the world of faith and sport? You go first with the hit and miss.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna go. I've had a pretty good run with my hits. So I guess I'll stay with the hits until otherwise notated. But I'm gonna get a hit, and it's gonna come out of the great state of Texas, and it's a dual hit here. So it's I don't know if we call that a double. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's a double hit coming from the great state of Texas. And I think first off, we're going to give kudos to the Texas Rangers, who just won the World Series. And ironically enough, they were the only MLB team to not participate in Pride Night. So, we could look and wonder and speculate on why that decision was made. But nonetheless, they won the World Series. Of course, the Dodgers didn't make it too far, and about their little drag show they had, back in the summer. So who knows? Whatever. But and then on the other side of the ball, we've got C.J. Stroud, playing for the Houston Texans. He is a rookie quarterback. He was the number 2 overall pick last April, and he completed 30 of 42 passes for the NFL record, 470 yards and 5 touchdowns with no interceptions, as he led his team to a 39-37 victory over the Buccaneers. When he was interviewed post-game, asking about that accomplishment, he first and foremost, he gave praise and thanks to his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and he said, without him, obviously, it would be worthwhile. It wouldn't be worthwhile, and he wouldn't have been able to accomplish it. So, young guy, I think 22 years old, maybe.
Sounds about right.
22 years old. That's the first thing out of his mouth. I mean, I love hearing that from these young guys, coming out with all this money and all this stardom and all this hype, and they are not ashamed to give honor, where it needs to be given to our Lord. So kudos to CJ Stroud with the Houston Texans and the Texas Rangers. Let's go.
Outstanding, brother. I love that. A double hit. Yeah, we'll call that a double. It was against the fence, and you were rounding second, headed for third. Brother, you went in a direction I didn't expect you to go, but I thought that was great. You connected the fact that the Dodgers, right? They kind of not only had this Pride Night, but they embraced it, and they didn't go very far in the playoffs. And I think they were favored to win. They were certainly one of the favorites to win the World Series.
Yeah,
they didn't do it, and then. So God is looking down upon this is the hint that you gave our listeners here.
It's an ironic thing, Doc, and I got to tell this quick story. So
go ahead.
A couple of doors down from our house, a new family had moved in maybe around a year ago, maybe not so much. And one of the first things to put on their newly renovated house was a pride flag, and not really just a pride flag, but the trans flag. Embracing everything about that. It's little taking it to the next level. So every time I would drive past this tree, it really I didn't like it. And of course there was those thoughts that maybe I should go take this flag, do something with this flag, but no, I don't do that. I'm not going to trespass. I'm going to respect their right to do that. But every time I drive by, it's always there. So a couple of weeks ago, I drive past and I notice on this poor tree, this 80-year-old tree has been there doing its thing for 80 plus years, minding its own business. And I see a big old chunk of bark falling off this tree. And I just was really kind of taken back by that. And as the days progress, in the matter of 3 to 5 days, this tree lost a tremendous amount of bark. And by the next week, there's a tree company out there hacking away, taking this poor tree down. So I don't know what happens. You can't say that stuff, brings, whatever consequences upon itself. But our Lord, certainly he knows what he's doing, and he allows certain things. And I just thought it was ironic. So I think it's just as ironic as the Dodgers not making it out of the playoffs. So who knows? I don't know.
That's interesting. I like the way you think, brother. This gives it these past 5 minutes gives an idea of how the obligation shows host Jason Murphy thinks on a regular basis. Jason, this past weekend, brother, LSU of course played Alabama. And it was,
thanks, Doc.
I know.
Let's bring that in. Had to be talked about. Let's go. Had to be talked about. Let's go.
So I asked this Penn State fan one time. He was a guest on my show, big Penn State guy. He went there as an undergrad and everything. And I asked him one time, I go, is there a loss that hurt more than the other? And I'll never forget. He paused for about 5 seconds. He goes, they all hurt. And And is that the way you experience LSU football? Like
they
you
all
watch,
hurt.
They all hurt, and it never gets easy. But right. You know what you have to do, Jay? You have to have more kids, because because I noticed that in the years, this is one of the things. If anything, my belief in God went up, and there's a certain level of seriousness here. Is Michigan had those years between about 2013 and 2000 that was bleak, right? They're bad, and Rutgers was beating them, and all these people were beating them, and so forth. And during that time, Jason, we were having kid after kid after kid. And I remember my brother would text me, and he was living and dying with the Wolverines. He'd text me, and he goes, "Did you see that play? This is embarrassing," or "This game was embarrassing." And I wrote back and I went, "Is Michigan on?"
Yeah.
I didn't even know. Priorities. But brother, that's what I would suggest if you're hurting. But LSU's a good team. They played a really good game against Alabama, and I think Brian Kelly's one of the best coaches out there, brother. I think they're going to be fine. Yeah. It's just he chose a really tough conference. Why did he choose the SEC?
No greater way to go. So it was tough. We've certainly got the offense, but our defense just has unfortunately not shown up the way it needed to. So anyway,
I hear you, brother. And I have to admit, man, I am in the glory of. I think this is the best team since I was a kid. This is how long it's been since Michigan has been this good, brother. The last time they were this good, I had hair. So I'm just saying that's how good this team is.
There you go.
Folks, you're listening to Faith and Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. The other voice is Jason Murphy. He is doing all kinds of stuff here in the state of North Carolina. But he's got his show, The Obligation. You can check it out at theobligationshow.com. He's also the coordinator of the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas. Check out the Martyrs Walk as well. I'm going to come back to that, brother, so you can point people to that mission that you have there as well. So Jason and I, as always, the first guest on the show, we talk about hit or miss, something positive or negative in the world of sport. And mine has to do with an NHL player by the name of Shane Pinto. Now, he was suspended recently for 41 games for gambling. And the reason, though, that's the fact that he gambled is not my hit. The hit is the fact that he apologized in the manner in which he did it. Now, keep this in mind, folks. The NHL schedules 82 games per year, and 41, of course, is exactly half of those games. And Jason and I were communicating off air before we did this. In fact, I think it was before the weekend, and Jason said something like, boy, this is a big deal. If it was 41 games, something bad happened. And of course, it was probably the fact that he was directly betting on NHL games and maybe even his own Ottawa Senators game.
That's right.
So, Jason, here's his apology. And I'm going to make a comment, and then I'll give you a chance to pipe in on this as well. So this is his apology. This is his comment after he was found out about a suspension of 41 games. Quote, I want to apologize to the National Hockey League, the Ottawa Senators, my teammates, the fans, and the city of Ottawa, and most importantly, my family. I take full responsibility for my actions and look forward to getting back on the ice with my team, said Shane Pinto of the Ottawa Senators. This is, according to the Ottawa Sun, needless to say, the local paper there to the Senators, he had an online gambling account in the U.S. that was flagged by what is known as an NHL Integrity Protection Partner, which alerted the league. And the Sun writes that it was, quote, because of unusual activity. Jason, it sounds... I know I'm laughing at this. This is not a laughing matter, but it's really amazing to me. Although his apology was great, that he has this opportunity to make all of this money. I did not look up what his annual salary is, but he's in a major sport. He is on a NHL team. He's going to make good money, and it's just surprising and equally disappointing when players get caught doing this, because it's pretty obvious he was gambling on the NHL. They wouldn't have suspended him for that long. And I just get equally disappointed, and as I am surprised, because they're going to make a lot of money, and he just probably wanted more, right?
Yeah, I think NHL probably has some sort of specific software that monitors the wiring coming out of FanDuel or DraftKings. And I think you saw a couple of Senator players and staff loading up after a particular game, maybe. I don't know. but that sounds awfully I mean, it would be hard to prove, I would imagine, unless you could like do some replays and see some specific incidences where maybe he pulled back, or who knows. I mean, hopefully that's not what was going on. That was my first reaction. I mean, for that many games, I would think maybe there was some direct relation to his team that he, a game that he was involved with, because that would be much worse, obviously, than just betting on other
That's
teams.
Right.
So who knows? And hopefully he'll learn from this, and the apology sounds sincere enough, and he'll move on and clean his way up and be better for it.
Yeah. I hope he is too. It's interesting because I was thinking as you're talking about this, about the ways in which the NHL probably found out about this. But Ed and I were talking, I remember about 6 months ago, Ed Billick, the gentleman that often joins me on this show like Jason does. And Jason, Ed and I were talking about, and we agreed that as soon as the NHL, the NFL, and the MLB, and all these major sports entities entered into the world of online gambling, and and of course, as you know, they take a certain percentage of those monies that are bet. I said, somehow, some way, Ed, this is going to creep itself greater into the everyday lives of the people that are playing that game, because
like boxing.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I think it's been a part of boxing for a long time. It'd be interesting to, but this is different, of course. And what my theory is the slippery slope, right? We have used this term, this expression for decades now, but it does. As soon as you give the okay that it's okay to bet on the NHL, and the NHL is not only endorsing it, they're taking a piece of this. It just says something like almost the little wink that happens, Jason, like, don't bet on it, you guys, but then they wink and and I know that's not fair to the NHL or NBA and so forth, but the fact is that slippery slope was entered as soon as they became a part of it. Would you agree that there's some association between those two concepts?
Oh, I absolutely would agree with that for sure. Yeah, it's just kind of
isn't it a natural progression?
Crossing of lines there.
Yeah.
It's just
those you brought me onto another analogy. The lines became blurry, right? There was a clear line between you're a member of this professional sports team, and this is where gambling is, and they just kind of brought them together, and now it's a little blurred. And I think we're going to hear about this more and more. But let's end the way we started, and that is kudos to Shane Pinto for such a good apology. I think so few people do it, especially in the world of sport. I think they're guilty of really bad apologies. So I hope this goes quick for him. And like you said, I hope he rebounds from this in a really good way. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport here on Radio Maria. This is where we merge sport and virtue. Thank you for joining us today, wherever, whenever, and however you're joining us. We have just a couple more minutes with Jason Murphy, our special guest for the day. Jason, before you go, I want to talk about Dabo Swinney and why he made the news in the last couple weeks. Dabo Swinney is the, I think, great football coach for the Clemson Tigers. He's won a couple national championships. He does not shy away from a microphone when he has something to say. He will talk about his faith. He will talk about what's wrong in the world of NCAA football. He will talk about even what's wrong with sometimes within our culture. He's been called out on that, even though I've agreed with virtually everything he said. But Jason, let me walk through exactly why he kind of got into some hot water in the last couple of weeks. So he does what most coaches do, and they have a weekly radio program to talk about the previous win or loss over the weekend and so forth. And they had just lost to NC State, one of the ACC rivals in their program, and they fell to 4-4, 4 wins and 4 losses. And a Clemson fan called into this Tiger Calls radio show. And what this radio caller did, Jason, was he said, so I'm curious, this is quoting, why are they paying you $11.5 million a year to go 4-4? And of course, if you want to start an argument, Jason, that's exactly how you start a conversation, right? Because he's not trying to lose those games. The fan is obviously frustrated. A lot of people feel this way when these athletes get paid a lot of money and they lose, or the coach gets paid a lot of money and they don't do a good job and so forth. And he jumped all over this kid. He started saying, let's see, I'm going to go to what he said. He goes, you're part of the problem, to be honest with you, Swinney responded. The expectation is greater than the appreciation. And that's the problem. We've won 12, 10+ seasons in a row, and that happens 3 times in 150 years. So you want to know why Clemson isn't sniffing the national championship? We've won 2 in the last 7 years. So there's only 2 other teams that can say that, Georgia and Alabama. Okay. And sorry about that, folks. And so just to end that part, he said, we've won 2 in the last 7 years, and there's only 2 other teams that can say that. I say, Jason, that this was out of frustration. This was he didn't like the arrogance of that caller, but also there's something to be said about the following, brother, and that is there's this old saying of sports does not build character, but it displays character. And I think it can do both. I've said it on this show before many times. It can do both. It can build character, but it also displays character. And I think he's in a bad way right now because he's losing. He's not used to losing. I still think he was being human. I'm not dogging him on this. I'm just kind of explaining away. It's not an excuse. It's just an explanation. He caught him at a bad moment. And this is one of those things where it gets really difficult for the coaches to do this. I probably most of the time don't want to go on the air. They have no idea what question's coming. And I think it just caught him off guard. And if nothing else, just caught him in a bad mood. I'll give you the last minute on this.
Yeah, sure. No, Doc. I think, it shows his willingness and ability to lean into the problem, because obviously if that's your record and you're going on, you're going to be taking calls. I'm sure everyone can assume 9 out of 10 callers are probably going to be frustrated. Like, hey, coach, what's going on? Hey, coach, why aren't we winning games? So he knew that going in, and he, I'm sure he didn't have to be on that show, but he also had some righteous indignation, right? Some righteous, anger there, and stated, what? He was one of the least paid coaches when he came on, and he has worked his tail off. And I think he used some stronger language than that, but he worked his tail off to get where he was. And I think, unfortunately, if you look at some of those top tier teams, we just, speaking from a LSU Tiger, born and bred in Baton Rouge, we sort of lose that appreciation when our expectations are so high. And, we forget how we've, the national championships we won. We forget all the winning seasons and the teams being gutted after national championships and being recruited to the NFL. So I don't really have a problem with what he said. I'm sure it was kind of a smart aleck, younger, probably, if not a college student, somebody who probably doesn't know the real world very well, who came on there. But I thought he handled it well. I think it was well received. Even on game day on ESPN this past Saturday, they played the entire context of that conversation. They didn't bleep out anything. So so good for Dabo. Dabo's a great coach. He loves his players. He supports he stands behind his players. And like I said before we got on the show, he reminds me of a Mike Gundy down there in Oklahoma State, from years ago, whenever he the media was attacking his kids and his players, and he said, you want to come after somebody, you come after me.
That's right.
And he took full responsibility, and Dabo did the same thing. He said, I'm responsible. I'm 100% responsible for what's going on that team and why we're not winning. But good for Dabo for holding his ground, and I'm sure he'll keep chopping wood, and Clemson will be back where they need to be.
They will. Well stated, brother. One last thing before you go. I mentioned you're part of this mission called the Martyrs Walk. Tell everybody briefly about what the Martyrs Walk is and how they can find out more information about it.
Absolutely. So the Martyrs Walk is a relatively new event, apostolate that I'm just getting off the ground. It is essentially a Catholic men's retreat, kind of combined with the aspects of a military boot camp. So an Ignatian retreat and military boot camps, you have prayer, you have physicality. We're there to really just help men awaken. Feel like, these days men have been so comfortable and so complacent. We've kind of stepped out of the leadership roles in our families, in our churches, in our communities that we need to be. So we're there to bring a man and show him he is capable of much more than what the world is trying to convince men that they are made of. We're made in the image and likeness of God, and we were called to a much higher dignity than the average male is participating with. So the Martyrs Walk intention is to take a man and push him to the breaking point in mind, body, and soul, and show him that he is capable of more. So you can find out more about the Martyrs Walk at themartyrswalk.com. We have upcoming event coming up November 30th to December 2nd. And then we'll be offering them quarterly in 2024. So you can stay online and check it out on Instagram, the Martyrs Walk, and Google the Martyrs Walk. Also, real quick plug for the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas coming up on February 10th. Bishop Raphael Zarama from the Diocese of Raleigh will be coming down to be a part of that. First time in our conference history, 14-year history. Jesse Romero, great motivational speaker. He'll be there leading us off full day of prayer, brotherhood, fellowship at St. Thomas Aquinas in Charlotte. You can go online to CatholicMenoftheCarolinas.org and get your tickets.
Very good. Brother, just to be clear to our listeners, if they're interested in actually doing the Martyrs Walk, it may go beyond a walk and go to a jog and maybe even a sprint, right? As part of their
Oh yeah. Yep. Come as you are. We will meet you where you are, and we will show you're capable of more. Yeah.
Brother, I love it. You're just drawing them in with the walk, but eventually you'll get them into the sprint, but you just don't tell them that up front to get them in through the front door. I love it. Jason Murphy, thank you very much for being on this program. God bless you. And
been a pleasure, Doc. Thanks.
Absolutely. And we'll talk to you soon. See you, brother. There you go, folks. Jason Murphy, the host of The Obligation. Check out him and his show at theobligationshow.com, and check out the Martyrs Walk at themartyrswalk.com. This guy does great work. It's one of the reasons he's involved in this show so regularly. I really respect him. I really like him. So listen, we're going to go to break here in just 30 seconds. Just a general reminder, we have two people coming up in the second half of the show. Joe Condit, the founder and director of CatholicSpeakers.com, where parishes and conference organizers can go to bring that event to the next level. Joe's going to join us in just a couple minutes. And then the latter part of the show, Gerry McDermott, PhD, longtime professor of religion and philosophy. He wants you to know, folks, what Christians should know about the current Israeli war. So stay with us here on Faith and Sport. You're listening to Radio Maria. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Hey, folks, welcome back to Faith and Sport. You're listening to Radio Maria. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Faith and Sport. This is where we bring ethics, character, and morality from the world of sport into your living room. We thank you wherever, whenever, and however you're listening to this program. Listen, this has been a huge show. We had Jason Murphy on. He hosts The Obligation Show. Then we had Joe Condit, the founder and director of CatholicSpeakers.com. And then I promised you a third guest. This is the first time this show has ever done this, have three guests on in one hour show. And that's one of the reasons that this show is special. I try to make it so it is something special in your day. Either way, we thank you for listening to us. That third guest is Dr. Gerry McDermott. He's a longtime professor of religion and philosophy. He's the author of over 24 books. He's probably got 3 or 4 in the press right now, including one of the reasons he's been on this show. He wrote a book called Everyday Glory, The Revelation of God and All of Reality, in which he, in part, talks about the importance of sport in our culture, and that this is one of the ways that we glorify God is through this great competition that we know as sport. When I was talking to Gerry last week in just a personal conversation, I could tell he had so much to bring to the table on what Catholic Christians should know about the Israeli war that's currently going on. That's why I have Gerry on the show. Dr. Gerry McDermott, welcome to Faith and Sport.
Thank you, John. It's always good to be on your show.
No, thank you very much, brother. You've been so gracious with your time being on the show several times. I know we only have a few minutes. You're a busy guy, but this is a really important thing to you. You're passionate about the state of Israel. You're passionate about this war. What should Catholic Christians know about this war that they may not know, brother, that they should know?
Catholic Christians should know that the Catholic Church taught in Nostra Aetate, Vatican II, 1965, famous document, that the Catholic Church says, and of course it's still binding on Catholics, that God's eternal covenant with the Jewish people did not stop in the first century just because the majority of Jews did not accept Jesus as their Messiah. It continues.
Yes.
His covenant with them as his chosen people is an eternal covenant. So they're still his chosen people.
Yes.
And secondly, there are great Catholic theologians like Gavin de Costa in England who are calling for a minimal Catholic Zionism, the recognition by the Catholic Church that the land is still holy. Yes. And it was given to the Jews. It's very clear in Scripture.
Yep.
Both Old and New Testaments, by the way.
Yep.
And now look to this war. This is a war of genocide. It's against the Jewish people. We've seen this before in World War II with Hitler.
That's right.
And if we believed as Catholics that we should have supported the war to destroy Nazism, then we should also believe as Catholics that we should support Israel in its war to destroy Hamas, which is the new Nazism. They have in their charter to hunt down every Jew on the planet, particularly in Israel, and kill them, man, woman, and children, just like they did on October 7th. And they're continuing to do with their daily rocket fires from Gaza. And so Jesus was not a pacifist. Jesus tells many parables in which the conclusion of the parable is the king kills his opponents. In Matthew 21, the parable of the wicked tenants, Matthew says that these wicked tenants were put to a miserable death. Now, this is the Gospel of Matthew.
Yeah.
Jesus accepted the whole Old Testament, every single word. He says that in Matthew 5, verse 17. And Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament says there's a time for war. Yes, a time for peace, but there's also a time for war.
Yeah.
And these humanitarian ceasefires, you better believe that Hamas is not going to accept a ceasefire. It will keep firing its rockets all through the ceasefire. And here's the thing most Catholics don't understand, is Hamas has months of food and medicine stored away in the tunnels for its own soldiers. It does not share them with
its people,
civilian people. And it uses its own civilians as human shields, which is a major violation of the laws of war. Not to mention genocide, trying to wipe out a whole people, which is Hamas's stated intention.
That's right.
That is the most enormous violation of the laws of war and of natural law and of just war theory. So Catholics should support Israel's war against Hamas and not support these humanitarian ceasefires, which will be cynically used by Hamas to simply rearm and regroup, and they will continue to fire missiles against men, women, and children all throughout the so-called ceasefire.
Gerry, is it true that Israel called for certain Palestinians, civilians in a certain part of the Strip to leave, but then they were disallowed to leave by Hamas, correct? Because they want to use them as human shields. Yeah.
Yes, for the last few weeks, they have told the civilians to flee to the south because the war in this phase is going to be in the north. And Hamas said, no, we will not permit you to go to the south. So, I mean, just listen to that. These are Nazis, and they don't care about their own people.
Yeah. Brother, leave us with this. What in particular should our listeners pray for? These are folks that go to Mass on a regular basis, maybe even daily for some of them, but to include what intentions, specific intentions can they include in their daily prayer life?
Just as Catholics prayed for the defeat of Nazism in World War II, Catholics today should pray for Israel to wipe out and defeat Hamas, the new Nazism, which, by the way, the leaders of which have said, after we kill all the Jews, we're coming after the Christians.
Jeez. Brother, I thank you so much for coming on this program. I think this is something that was needed, and I'm so thankful for you because I know you got so much going on in your world, but this is a message that I think the listeners need to hear and need to hear from somebody like you. God bless you, brother. You and I will talk soon. You and I are friends off the air, so you and I will talk soon. But thank you very much for being a part of Faith and Sport on this day.
You're welcome, John.
There you go, folks. That's Dr. Gerald McDermott, longtime professor of religion and philosophy, author of over 24 books. Check out his book in particular, Everyday Glory, The Revelation of God and All of Reality. He's a good read in all of his books, and a couple of them, he included me. I think at least in one of them, he included me. So that one's got to be of higher quality than most. So I thank Dr. McDermott. I also want to thank Joe Condit, the Catholic Speakers founder and CEO. And also I want to thank Jason Murphy, who joined us in the beginning of the show. You can hear him on his show, The Obligation, theobligationshow.com. Also, check out Jason's other project called The Martyrs Walk. You can check it out at themartyrswalk.com. So, in conclusion, as I often do, I want to end with a quote from a pope on the world of sport, and it was St. John Paul II who said, "When sports are played and understood in the right way, they are an extraordinary expression of a person's better inner energies and of his ability to overcome the difficulties of competition." So, special thanks again to Jason Murphy, Joe Kahn, to Gerry McDermott, for all of them joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Radio Maria for more Faith in Sport. St. Sebastian, pray for us.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.